over the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about AI, and not only AI itself, but a big question facing leaders today. How do you manage this transformation? Really the human side of the transformation. And in order to do that, I'm joined by three leaders. Al Williams, CPO of Invesco, who's navigating this in the complex financial services world. Eva Choe, CPO of Clorox, who's dealing with this in a global consumer goods powerhouse. And Seb, who's part of a digital native, Booking.com. So let's start with a fun icebreaker. I'd love to know, in order, Al, Eva, Seb, what was your first job?
My first job, you chose that question, okay. I wasn't sure which one you're going to hit us with. First job. My first official, I guess, professional job was as a bill collector, And I tell people that's where I learned negotiation skills, is collecting bills. And this was, I'm going to date myself. Let's just say late 80s, on the phones, collecting, trying to get people to pay for their VCRs and TVs, that kind of thing.
Oh, this is going to be brutal. My first job was in college. I was a telemarketer for a newspaper magazine, trying to sell newspaper for 20 cents. Got to tell you, I wasn't successful.
Well, my first job was waitering tables, and I didn't know the difference between pepperoni and salame. As an Italian speaker, pepperoni is not salame, so I made a few pizzas wrong.
Nice, very nice. Okay, well, on to the topic at hand, and we'll start with you, Al. The first case that you have to do with building out any AI is securing the investment. What's the first question that you have to answer for your executive team on getting this investment secured, and how do you actually do that? What are some factors that you use to convince them that AI is really something that they should invest in, especially at a time when the ROI on AI is pretty unproven?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about our case in Invesco in a second, but my advice would be you have to start with the business case and the ROI and not with the technology. No offense to all the technologists and the suppliers and software companies that are here, but you start with the business case, the ROI, and then you determine what's the solutions that you need to deliver on that against your strategy. And in our case, I joined Invesco a little over 2 years ago, and we had a very small procurement organization that was doing mostly transactional type sourcing, and we did not have a system per se, like the typical procurement suites that you'd be familiar with. We didn't have those. We had an ERP, of course. We were paying our bills, but we didn't necessarily have anything upstream from a procurement point of view. So in our case, the business case was a lot more around augmentation of the existing team and kind of creating a force multiplier effect so that we could drive more spend under management, more savings, more value, but without having to invest in significant amounts of incremental resources. We did hire more people. We've added probably, 20% to the team, 25% to the team in the last 2 years. But it would have been probably 100% add had it not been for the technologies that we've been bringing on board. So a unique situation for us in that we didn't have anything to displace. We didn't really have systems that we had to prove against. But the ROI focus was key, and we tracked that all the way through the implementation of the program.
Got it. All right, Eva. Al's done all the hard work to secure the money. Now you've got to prove the worth of the investment to your board. What are the measures that you use, whether they may be traditional or non-traditional measures that you use to actually showcase the value of the investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the most traditional ones, of course, is going to be the usual suspects, the cost savings, right? The cycle time reductions, all of that is super important. But that's really not telling the full story, right? of what we can do. I think the conversation now is really starting to shift for a lot of our procurement professionals and the value that we're actually bringing in, right? So a lot of what the board is looking for is, speaking the language in terms of what kind of outcome, right? So they're actually not sitting here to say, okay, what AI tools are you going to use, but rather what is in it for the enterprise. And what's in it for the enterprise is a lot on growth. It's a lot on innovation. It's a lot on resilience. And believe it or not, most of you guys are experiencing that AI is actually a force multiplier for a lot of that. So we're probably trending into an end-to-end value creation. And procurement is in a fantastic moment where we're really getting the spotlight at the board, at the executive level, and we should just truly enjoy that. I do want to add one provocative comment to that, though. So it's not only about measuring the metrics and what the board is looking for, but as you leaders start to implement this capability, this new capability, it's also raising the bar on the targets that we are actually putting up, right? Because there won't be too much tolerance for the same old, right? And so I want to kind of give an example of what I've heard recently, which was fascinating to me, is in the education sector. And so there's some discussions in some schools to say, hey, should our students use AI to write essays or not? And a lot of the schools are accepting, so they're going through that acceptance curve that they won't be able to control on what students will be doing. So what are they doing? They're accepting AI, and they're augmenting and raising the bar on the students' capability. How? Go ahead, write your essays with AI, come back to class. How do you make it better? How is that human intelligence make it better? And therefore, you're raising the bar as well as on the human judgment on the students. And I thought it was fascinating. And if I was to translate that back into our business, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? A lot of our capabilities will also be raising the bar in that. So that's a metric that, it's not common, it's not traditional, but it's something to talk about.
Love it. That's awesome. All right. Well, we've talked about the non-traditional metrics and how you actually challenge your team to showcase the value, or you can. So, as part of this, there's a very real case that's going on, which is fear. So, Al, just starting with you, how do you as a leader overcome the fear? You've got the traditional noise in the media around AI replacing jobs, but there are several probably unspoken things, and how do you as a leader tackle some of those? What are some of those? It'd be great to hear your points around that.
Yeah, look, I think there is a lot of concern and certainly fear that gets, I think, drummed up externally and in the media about AI and what does it mean. And every day you read something else about how AI is learning from itself and how it's kind of taking over, won't allow itself to be shut down and those types of things. And I think that does concern people in general around AI. I mean, one of the things that I tend to do within our organization is I speak less about AI and more about capability. I'm not trying to hide the fact we're using AI, but I also am focused more on, again, the capability and the outcome we're trying to drive, and a little less on sort of the technology underneath it. So, I wouldn't, back in the day when we were implementing, first generation software in procurement, we weren't talking about Java. We weren't talking about COBOL, if I could go back that far. We were talking about capabilities and solutions. So I think to some extent, AI has to be considered in a similar sort of sense today of, kind of focus on the outcome, focus on the capability. And then probably the other thing I would suggest, at least like in our case, is I try to air out as much concern, as many questions, as much open discussion on the topic as I can amongst our team. I kind of use this term, this phrase, passive resistance. I think the worst resistance or the worst dissension is what you don't know about. It's what happens outside of a framework by which you can discuss it. It happens outside of either a team meeting or a one-on-one where people amongst themselves are sort of building up some level of fear, some level of resistance, and you may not know about it. And it's hard to get in front of that because it's natural, but to the extent you can recognize that that's probably happening in all of your organizations and sort of knit that out, bring it to the front, shine light on it, and talk about it openly, and don't shy away from the topic, I think is key. But again, I focus more on capability than AI.
And Seb, flip side of that coin, as a digital native and with the employees around you that are probably also digital natives, how do you see the younger generation translating AI as an opportunity, where it's enhancing their jobs, not looking to take them away?
Now, that's a great question. Thank you, Ajay. I would say the first thing that everyone is very excited about is potentially working less, maybe 4 days a week instead of 5. Both Gen Z and Gen Alpha are definitely known for work-life balance, mental health being a priority. So for sure there's going to be a shift also in the expectation from a job to start with, and AI could definitely come in and help with it. At the same time, there is a lot of excitement, in my opinion, around the creativity that can come with it. There is the 7-step processes that I guess we've all got into at some point that were created by great consultancies that were relevant until a certain point. Today they are relevant as a base, for sure. I always believe that as also newer, younger generation, you need to do the work to get your basis right. But at the same time now with AI, there may be a completely new different way to run an RFP, to move away from that basis that we're all very comfortable in, that works, we know that it works, but maybe AI will make it a bit more fun and a bit more balanced as well.
That's awesome. And so between the fear and the opportunity, Eva, how are you using this? Maybe there's some successes that you all have had to actually do more of the bottoms-up change network within your company. Maybe you've had some successes to use it to transform fear into an actual opportunity for your team. Some examples of that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Ajay's referring to in terms of the bottoms-up approach, what that means is that, earlier in the AI transformation or digital transformation, we quickly realized some mistakes in terms of doing a digital transformation top-down, thinking that at the top you really know what the bottom needs. That's not necessarily true. You think you know what they need, but you really don't. You do it with the best intention. So the bottoms-up approach, and it's something that I think is a lot more effective, is that you're actually empowering the team to really dictate what's needed, right? And it could be pockets of progresses in small areas, but that's going to be monumental essentially. So, what we're doing now is how do we do micro pilots or micro tests in different areas or real use cases? And it could be as simple as let's go and test a new RFP tool that exists out there. What does that do? He or she anyway needs to run a tender. Why don't we test and pilot a few tools out there? You're getting faster results. You're not wasting time because you're already doing what you needed to do. Now it's going to be a lot faster. You're probably even realizing incremental savings or incremental value. Had you not realized it, have you not used the tools? And all of that is doing what? It's actually fostering a lot of lack of fears, right? So then you realize, hey, this isn't so bad. This actually is augmenting my job and it's actually making me look a lot better with all these incremental results. And what's even more powerful and most important is that you start to spread the word about the cool features, about the cool results, and the word of mouth now becomes your change management strategy, right? So you start from the bottoms up. And then the top, we just fight for funding for you, but.
Okay, Well, this brings us to an important juncture of the intersection between talent and leadership, right? Dr. Eloise Epstein yesterday said something interesting. If you give the younger digital native audience outdated procurement platforms, you're essentially sending them a message that you hate them. So at this point, what do you all as leaders, Eva, Al, have you thought about where you've changed an old habit or changed some kind of a process to essentially get out of the way? And by the way, this was a question that Jennifer wanted to ask, but I'm asking on her behalf. So what is it that you all have done to get out of the way and let the new generation flourish?
I don't know. What's the opposite of a digital native? That's me, I think. So I don't know what that is. There's probably a phrase for that too. Thank God I've got Gen Zers at home that can show me how to use my phone. Sebastiano was helping me earlier actually on some of that, so thank you for that. I mean, it's a good question. I think that in the procurement sense and in the professional sense, one of the things that I've had sort of, and I was speaking to one of my colleagues earlier about this, one of the things I've sort of have always sort of focused on in implementing new technology solutions is augmenting the existing process. And I think that that is a bit of an old way of thinking, you know, where like technology would be an enabler. I think that we have to, especially with the level of technology and its capability that we're presented with today, I think we almost have to take a step back and look at the entire process itself and think about, well, maybe it's not just about automating these 2 steps in a 7-step sourcing process. Maybe it's about the entire sourcing process needs to change. And this is, again, the definition of an old dog, new trick here. This is sort of a challenging thing to get your head around. But I think it's something that, from a change management perspective, I think it's going to be important as we evolve, because these aren't just tools that can automate certain components of what we do and our teams do. I mean, they're fundamentally going to change how our teams work. It's not going to displace them, but it's going to change what they're responsible for. And if we don't reinvent the entire, if you want to call it, paradigm of procurement procedure and process, that could be a challenge. So I've shaped my thinking on that.
Awesome. Eva?
So I think you need to connect the two. You can't have, you know, 2 things bottom up and bottom and top actually working in silos, right? You got to connect the 2. The way we leaders maybe get out of the way is really at the very minimum, and you're absolutely right, leadership. I mean, people don't need management. They actually just need a common goal or a common North Star. I myself need that, right, from my own leaders. And as long as I know that, I think you just create a unified movement, right? So you don't really need to be managing or micromanaging. I mean, the team will execute towards that, right? But the key here is to make sure that, you know, we have that North Star, we have that vision, that common goal that really ladders up to the enterprise goal. And the rest is history. Yeah.
Okay. And my friend Sebastiano, you've just been anointed CPO for a day. Yeah, at one of these traditional Fortune 500 companies. What are you going to do to really give folks an opportunity? What are you going to do differently to what you've seen is being done today, and essentially set a platform up for your team to succeed?
It's a great question, and I guess it's an honor to, you know, visualize myself there. I'll say something that I think it's a bit out of expectation, especially in a conference where there's so many solutions and so much focus on the technology. I think the one thing I'd love to do is really to speak to people and be listening actively with a bunch of empathy. That would be the one thing, and really to encourage everyone to be on the same journey of active listening with empathy. Because at the end of the day, the way that I see it is the competencies and what you have to get done. Indeed, you could have a very strong capability base. You could have amazing AI tools. But I truly believe that we're creatures of emotions. If you stick around a team, if you stick around a company, a manager, it's because there is some sort of emotional balance in you that makes it interesting, makes it safe, which is key for our newer generation. Psychological safety is definitely something that we value a lot. So during that day, there's going to be a lot of conversations, having everyone talk to each other, but most importantly, to feel heard. Because you could indeed feedback through your company surveys. Do you like your vision? Do you understand? Yes or no? But I think where it really moves the needle is when you feel heard. And like, okay, my concern about AI, my concern about my future has been heard and shared. We're a very, maybe protagonist, and my booking colleagues will know it's one of our values. We're asked and suggested to be protagonists, but these generations are very much protagonists. We're used to be served in a customer-centric way, and I think that is definitely a change that should be across.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Well, we've talked about the business case. We've talked about how to handle the fear and change, and we've talked about how to get out of the way as well. With the folks in the audience, if you had one piece of advice for them, when they walk out of here, get to their offices on Monday, on setting off on this AI transformation journey, what would it be? So Al, let's start with you.
I think she would be better. I think Ava would be better off answering this. I think she just had a similar dialogue with her boss. I mean, I think I kind of go back to be business case focused, capability focused, ROI focused. I'm a big fan of making sure that the business strategy aligns with the procurement strategy, and the procurement strategy has enablers associated with achieving those objectives and metrics. And we all have scorecards in our procurement organizations. I imagine there's not one scorecard that doesn't include savings or ROI or some sort of economic value metric component. And I think the one thing I would suggest walking out of here is that everyone keeps focused on that and don't let the hype of the technology and its capabilities take over. And that's probably the best way to sell it internally as well. Now, especially in a financial services institution, because we tend to be risk adverse. I mean, if we're managing your money for you to some extent, that's what you pay us to do, is to manage risk. And it's also how we manage the company. So we have to think about that in those terms and make sure we have a very, again, business case focus to what we do.
Great. Eva?
I'll keep it simple. I think that, just from experience, start with a business problem. Go and find out what is your biggest pain point, where is your biggest business problem, and ask yourself, how can AI actually resolve that for you? How can it get it smarter, faster, find that solution for you? Don't break your head around that. I would also say that in doing that, it's not chasing technology and it's not being enamored by what you all see here, because you can, right? This is candy line for procurement here. But really start with your business case, your problem. How can technology actually augment that and resolve that for you?
Seb?
Bonjour. I think if there was one piece, is really to be people first and really think through and take a lot of pride and commitment towards it. If people aren't going to be happy to use whatever new tool is going to come through, it's not good. Like, I really believe in good leadership and leadership that is driven with emotional intelligence. And also in a world where there is so many opportunities, so many companies you could go to, if you want to stand out, I think emotional intelligence and being people first is definitely something that would be appreciated.
Great. Well, that's been a fascinating discussion. I think I'm walking away with the fact that this transformation is certainly about psychology and culture more so than it is about technology.
Absolutely.
So thank you to my incredible panelists, Al Williams, Eva Choe, and Seb Finocchiaro.
Thank you. Great job.